I have to minimize and eventually close the gap between what I want to be able to do and what I can do.
Every ingredients. And the best part, it comes together in about 40 minutes using just one pan. It's a perfect food for a busy weeknight as it comes together so quickly. It's elegant enough for a relaxed weekend lunch. Either way, make sure to enjoy an extra crunchy baguette and a bottle of Spanish red wine, more specifically from the region of Navarra, and have yourself a fabulous meal. All right, let's just jump right into this. I'm gonna heat a stock pot with a medium heat and add in a generous 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, which is 35 milliliters.
Alright, so you have to understand that this is not any fluff idea. This is a scientific hypothesis. This is a concrete scientific hypothesis, which goes as follows. My writing is illegible to most, but not me. So, here we go. There's the null hypothesis. No relationship between creative expression and beauty. What's this asterisk? Here we go. Beauty here defined not as conventional attractiveness, but as a profound, authentic emanation from an individual, instantly recognizable for what it is once in direct contact with it, but difficult to put into words and define clearly. But there is a physical attractiveness element to this beauty too. The word "too" should be there. And then there's a connected point. We'll see how to distinguish between beauty and conventional attractiveness, despite both having an element of physical, superficial attractiveness soon. What are the predictions? Okay, just 2 quick predictions that stem from each, the null and the alternate hypothesis. The null, those who self-report as creative will be as beautiful/ugly as those who don't consider themselves creative. So imagine you have like a pool of people who are considered to be truly beautiful. Then within that pool, there's going to be a sort of a 50-50 mix between creatives and non-creatives. Whereas the alternate hypothesis predicts that in that pool of truly beautiful people, most of them, if not all of them, will be creatively expressive people. So here's a prediction. This is the most interesting prediction that stems from the alternate hypothesis. And I hope it makes sense, but here we go. As compensation for failing to outwardly express authentic inner content and the inner rot/decay that comes about as a result, people seek to adorn themselves with culturally accepted markers of beauty. Let's explain that. Okay, yeah, so without a shadow of a doubt, this is by far the most freaking interesting prediction of this hypothesis. And let me explain it a bit better. So, if you fail to creatively express yourself, imagine you have a creative source within from which content, for want of a better word, content is continuously arising or emerging that insists upon expression. Should you fail to express said content, then it festers within, it lingers, and then it comes to cause rot, inner decay, because you fail to adequately outwardly express that inner content. And for some reason that just leads to decay. It leads to, it's a form of, okay, this is a bit of a tangent, but just think about it. It's a form of self-betrayal, because instead of expressing that which insists upon expression from within, you suppress it because you think to yourself, no, the world doesn't want to hear what I have to say. The world doesn't want to see what I have to present. So it's a form of self-betrayal. Okay, so that leads to rot. So then once your inner world is rotten, you have no source from which to consult and use as a reference for how to outwardly express. So the only reference you're left with is the cultural references. So you look out to your culture and you say, okay, how do the people who I'm currently surrounded by in my culture, what sort of standards of beauty do they accept? And then you, depending on the degree to which the inner rot has progressed, you desperately seek to adorn yourself with these culturally accepted markers of beauty. So a prediction of this hypothesis is that maybe the most conventionally beautiful and attractive people, let's not use beautiful because then we're mixing up words, the most conventionally physically attractive humans are the most inwardly rotten. Maybe. Now, I think that is a prediction, but there will be exceptions to that rule. Of course, you can have a human who is creatively expressive, who also happens to have won the genetic lottery and is phenomenally beautiful. Sorry, I just mixed up the word again. Phenomenally physically attractive. But, the distinction. How do you distinguish between beauty and mere conventional physical attraction? Because we did say that we're going to be able to distinguish that. And really, I have no better way of thinking about it than you have to directly come into contact with the human who is truly beautiful. And there's a sort of an emanation from them. It's like they have this profound, authentic emanation of what I refer to as beauty. I just can't think of any better word for it. And I can think of two humans in my life. They were teachers at the time. And I was much younger, I was a boy. And one of them was, you would consider conventionally physically attractive. The other one wasn't. And they were both freaking beautiful humans. And you just know it when you encounter it. So I hope that is a fair description. I hope that resonates with you. I hope it's a good distinction. So that's the scientific hypothesis. I think something analogous to the Dunning-Kruger effect has occurred just now with this thought turned hypothesis. But it's not quite the case that the deeper I went down this rabbit hole, the more I learned, and therefore the more I learned how much more there is to learn. That's the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's more like the deeper I went down this rabbit hole, the more associated ideas I saw were related to this idea, which has got me very confused. I'm a bit lost in the sauce. So a few of those related ideas are self-respect. How is self-respect related? Because consider the creative source within. You must respect yourself more than you do what your culture tells you to respect, so as to actually voice or translate that content that wells up from within into something tangible. So as I went about the work of translating this hypothesis into something tangible, which at the moment of its inception was a very clear idea to me. It was very obvious how creative expression and beauty were related. But now, I'm not quite so sure. Let me just sum up the hypothesis. It goes as follows. You have within a creative source. Content emerges from that source. In your interacting with the external world, that content arises because it's related to the external world, and it can only come about as a result of having been stimulated by something in the external world. If you choose to suppress that content by not actively seeking a creative outlet by which to express it, then your inner world becomes degraded, and there's an inner decay. That's the rot I was speaking to.
Who cares?
Whereas if you choose to express it through some outlet, then you somehow remain true to yourself. And in remaining true to yourself, that's what I'm referring to as beauty. I think that makes sense. I really do. And I think the whole goal of this channel, the whole project here, is to sift out the wheat from the chaff Okay, so another related idea, excuse the bouncing back and forth, but I'm confused. Another related idea is just how overwhelmed all of us are as a result of being inundated with streams and streams and streams of information.
Sorry, probably too much information.
Which we don't, and here's a third related idea, which we don't actively consume, but we passively consume it. So we just let it hit our brains, hit our ears, go into our brains, and then out the other ear, yeah? Whereas if you choose to actively consume information that you receive, then you interpret it through your own framework, through your own virtual model of the world that you have running in your mind. And you can incorporate then that information into that virtual model and update the virtual model so that it more accurately reflects the actual real world.
Yes, science!
So that's another related idea. But coming back to the point of this video, when I say it's not a fluff idea, what I mean is you can actually go out into the world as an individual and test it to see if it's true. You can look at somebody and say, whoa, you're really beautiful, in this sort of ambiguous sense of beauty, not mere superficial physical attractiveness. And then you can explore this person's mind and figure out how it is that they operate. And maybe in getting to know them better, you realize, oh, they're an extremely freaking creative human. They love to write, they love to read, they love to compose music, they love to garden, whatever it is that they do. Cook, they love to cook. Whatever it is, you will, according to this hypothesis, the prediction is that you'll figure out they have many creative outlets, or at least one, through which they can express the inner content that wells up within, in their interacting with the world. So, I think the main, or the meta, overarching point of this video is, look, there's a way of going about understanding in this world.
Yes, science!
It's called the scientific method, but you don't have to get so nerdy about it. You don't have to geek out on science to operate in this way. Just realize you observe the world, you generate hypotheses about the observations. From those hypotheses, predictions stem, and in returning to the world after having generated your hypothesis, let's just say one, you can test the predictions and see if they play out in the real world. If they do, you can be a bit more confident in the hypothesis. If they don't, you're going to have to go back to step 2 and generate a new hypothesis to try and explain the observations that you see. Boom. So that's that. Let me leave you with this.